How many of us have found our way on a clear night, away from the lights we have here below to gaze up at the stars? I hope this is a pretty universal thing, and if you've not done that or haven't done it recently, you need to put it on your schedule soon. Going out perhaps in the middle of nowhere and looking up, it can be more difficult depending upon where you live, but in my town growing up, you could drive just a few miles out, be sort of in the middle of nowhere, and catch a spectacular sky. But sometimes you can also find it in the midst of everything as well. In the middle of my college campus, there were some set of practice fields, one after another, all strung together. And each of the fields, in order to help with water not gathering, they had a little bit of a crest to them. And so the water would run off the main parts. And after the practices at night, when they turned off the lights, you could lay down in the crevices between the fields, get some of that light out of your vision, and get an amazing view of the sky, of the stars and the planets in their courses. And I remember one night in particular, there was a meteor shower, and you could see the brilliance coming into our atmosphere. Now, unlike a meteor shower, when we are engaged in stargazing, what we're really engaged in is bearing witness to that which has already come to be, bearing witness to that which is already past. In other words, what we know about how light travels through the universe, the way that it gets finally to our eyes here on earth, is that we are bearing witness to light that was created when our grandmother used to hold us and sing us lullabies when we were little. We're bearing witness to the light that was from the stars that burned bright at the birth of this congregation. We're bearing witness to the stars that burned across the galaxies and sent light to us from the time of the building of the great cathedrals. Light that burned all the way to the time when, of course, the light of the world, Jesus, offered to us resurrection life. So whenever we engage in this stargazing, we are participating in the witness of the past to this, our present moment. So as we come to Ash Wednesday today, I wanted to think a little bit about that, because one of the things we know about those stars as we remember and mark ourselves today, we remember what God said to Adam in Genesis, what the psalmist repeats, what we hear this time each year: "You are but dust, and to dust you shall return." And it's that all of those stars that lay out there in this vast expanse of the universe that God has created are also made of the same dust, the same stuff that you and I are made of. I think it was Joni Mitchell at Woodstock, something about how we're stardust. And so it just turns out to be the case that as we mark ourselves with ash on our forehead, so we also remember, just as we are not God, as we are not the creator of all of this, we are also not less than that which God uses to make the stars that shine in the night sky. Now, for some of us, stardust doesn't quite capture this moment, this year. Burning bright feels less like a beautiful, brilliant night sky, and perhaps more like a dumpster fire consuming everything in every sector of society. Okay, fair. Perhaps this other creation story might help us make some sense of that. It comes from one of the first summers in my priesthood, and my rather large parish had a summer music and arts camp, kind of like the vacation Bible schools we perhaps used to attend. And one of the rotations of the activities that the kids went through was a station where they did origami. How many folks have done some kind of origami before? Okay, good. This one day, they were doing a different kind of origami, and they had different patterns you could choose from, and they were working on creating an origami frog. Now, a frog is a fairly complicated thing to create. It involves various complex and advanced folds in order to be able to accomplish. And this novice origamist showed up at the first session when the kids came through. They were doing half-an-hour cycles, and by the end of the fourth session, I was still not done with my frog. To spare you, we'll fast forward. I did end up making the frog and putting it together, but of course in origami, when you make the folds, right, everything is flat. And so in order to give the origami frog some shape, some life, you have to put air into it. And so this is like the story of creation, where God forms Adam out of the dust, and then, as we read, breathes life into Adam. And so I had to breathe some life into this frog. And now the interesting thing that you may not know, that I didn't know when I started this out, is that once you make all of these complicated folds and get your frog together, there's only one place where I could put air into this frog, if you're following me. Now, I'm not completely sure how that squares with Genesis's reading or understanding of God breathing life into Adam, but we have to wonder some days when the burning bright feels less like a beautiful night sky and more like a dumpster fire consuming every sector of society, if the frog version of the story didn't make a whole lot more sense. Of course, I also try to remember that time on days when I'm feeling a little extra puffed up or perhaps full of myself. This Ash Wednesday, beloved, I find myself thinking of how the stars must have looked to the folks who built Coventry Cathedral. Originally the parish church of St. Michael in Coventry, England. In that era of the 14th and 1500s, like centuries before, construction could span multiple generations, during which one could be born into a family of craftsmen, be trained into your trade, work your trade on a section of the cathedral, pass on your trade, and retire knowing you'd never see it finished in your lifetime. I sometimes wonder what kind of courage it took, what kind of vision to be devoted to such a sense of purpose and idealism. I feel today that perhaps our call is to see the ash on our foreheads, the dust of the stars, in the residue of the dust and ash worn by builders of cathedrals. I wonder if we have forgotten how to build for more than ourselves. Probably the better lesson I should have taken from my origami adventure. I wonder if we've lost touch with what it takes to build cathedrals that long outlast us. The difference is that if we choose to do this, if we choose to build in an era, then like we have the benefit of knowing, like Coventry, whatever we build can be bombed into a shell of itself, not just by the power of war or violence, but by our very politics. The difference, if we choose to do this, is that we know that and we choose to build anyways. This isn't the Ash Wednesday we deserve, beloved, but it is the Ash Wednesday we need. Because it may be true that some of us won't see in our earthly pilgrimage what we thought we might by way of progress just a few years ago. Building cathedrals is hard, y'all. And I'm not saying that I know where to begin again, other than to remember, just as we are not God, not creators of all that is, we are also not less than that which God uses to make the stars that shine in the night sky. And perhaps this Ash Wednesday, we wear again the dust of the stars, the ash of the cathedral builders, and choose to do hard things so that those who one day look at the stars in the night sky will know that they are bearing witness to a light that burned in our day, not a light just for us, not a light that always showed us how to see clearly or felt like it kept us warm, but just enough light for us to start again building things like cathedrals that they yet will see when they look up to the night sky. So, beloved, take courage as we again wear this sign of our cross, our mortality. And today, look up. Look up past the cathedral spires or their ruins. Look up to the stars, beloved, and ask God to make us equal to our age. Amen.